Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the columnist Carol Malone and Alison Morris, who's a columnist for the Belfast Telegraph, with us from now until just before midnight. And welcome to both of you. Lots to discuss, not least to look ahead to that mini budget tomorrow. But the backdrop of this, Carol, is, as we read in the Eye, mortgage hikes and recession.
Yeah, the Bank of England are suggesting that we're already in recession. They actually said that today. They put the rates up from 1.75 to 2.25%, which is going to be a hell of a blow for people who are on a variable rate mortgage. I mean, this is a massive hike. They're saying could be up to £50 a month more for people on trackers. It's not going to affect the people on fixed rate mortgages yet, but that's going to hit them very soon. But the great news today, of course, is the Chancellor has said that he's going to reverse the national insurance tax hike, and that means that I think it's about 920,000 businesses are going to get a tax reduction of about £10,000, which is incredible. It was a 1.2% rise. That's now going to be reversed in November, I think. So it's a good and bad day on all sorts of fronts. I mean, the budget is coming tomorrow. We kind of know what's in it. We know what's coming. And I think I may have to eat my words about Liz Truss. I was saying that she was weak and indecisive and making lots of promises during the election that she was never going to be able to keep. And she's going full pelt now, with the tax. She's going to get rid of the national insurance increase. She's going to get rid of the corporation tax increase. She's going to lower taxes, energy bills freeze. It's going to be. They're calling it a mini budget, but this is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a mini budget. This is a massive budget. And I think I saw a figure today that said that every minute the Chancellor will be on his feet tomorrow will cost £2 billion the country to repair. So it's an awful lot of money.
Well, that's absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? You say we know what's in it. Let's take a look at The Guardian. Again, economy in recession as Kwarteng unveils his mini-budget. The bits we know are in it are the bits that were promised, I guess, by Liz Truss during her many hustings and her manifesto efforts, which is, as you said, the national insurance rise, which is gone from November the 6th, axed the planned increase in corporation tax, which was due to go up from 19% to 25%, and scrap the cap on bankers' bonuses, which we heard, I think, last week, did we not, as part of wider city deregulation. Other elements of it, though, have been reported, but I guess not yet confirmed, Alison. Issues such as stamp duty, a fast track of a Schedule 1P cut to income tax, and this slashing of VAT from 20% to 15% across the board, all reportedly being considered. We wait to see how far Mr Kwarteng will go with this idea of a sort of reversal in tax to becoming a tax-cutting government. What's your best bet?
Well, I do think that the government have had, because of the period of mourning, they've had a longer planning period than they would have had. They've had a number of days, they've had over a week now to put these plans in place, where obviously they would have had to make these announcements much quicker. So I suppose it's given them more preparation time. A lot of what's planned, it will help businesses, as Carol said, but there's also the planned increase or the potential increase on people's mortgages of over £270 in some cases a month. If you add that to the increase in the cost of food, and if you add that to the increase in energy costs, that's just going to cripple some homeowners. And then we're going to see a repeat of the previous recession, where people are just going to have their homes repossessed because they're just going to be unable to make those payments. The Guardian is slightly more sceptical of how these plans are going to solve our current crisis than some of the other papers, which are obviously welcoming these moves. They will help some, but I don't see how much of this is going to help those on the sort of middle income and low income roles of the ladder, people who are really, really suffering already. And let's face it, we haven't even been anywhere near the cold spell. We haven't really seen the impact of those huge increases in energy, but people will start feeling them as we go into October and November and December. That price cap, I think, is one of the most important things. And the fact, from a purely selfish point of view, we still have no functioning assembly, no devolution in Northern Ireland. a lot of these issues, are they going to be rolled out across all the devolved nations? Are we all going to equally have access to any of the price cuts in terms of the mitigations for people for energy, and also those caps on energy prices, because they're going to be essential coming in to these winter months? I really fear for how, some people who are already struggling are going to cope. We would hope that this government takes into consideration not just how to help the very wealthy and those in business keep afloat during this crisis, but also how to keep those people who are struggling to either feed their children and heat their homes at this time, because they are the people who need the help instantly. They need it now.
Yes, and certainly everyone's suggesting today that the national insurance cut helps the better off and not those at the lowest income levels. But the fundamental focus that we'll hear tomorrow morning is growth. Daily Express is one celebrating that, one welcoming that, and the suggestion that Kwasi Kwarteng will announce the creation of low-tax, low-regulation investment zones in his mini-budget. The list of 38 of them, Blackpool Council, Bedford, Kent, Lancashire, you name it. And the idea is to liberalise planning rules in specified agreed sites, releasing land and accelerating development. The problem with this for some people will be, Carol, that some of these projects will be via watering down environmental assessments and other regulations. And this is the idea, as well as these investment zones, of speeding up around 100 major infrastructure projects. So, I think this will come with a strong critique.
Yeah, I think it will, Anna. She has already said at the start of the week, when some of the budget was being leaked, she has already said she doesn't care if what she does is unpopular. All she wants to do is grow the economy, because she knows we cannot survive. We're not sustainable as a country with the low level of growth we have now. So she has said she wants to do what works, not what is popular, and which makes her, I think, it's kind of impressing me in the sense that, Boris's government was flip-flopping all the time. If there was an unpopular policy or there was uproar over a policy, it was suddenly changed overnight. She's not going to do that. It was interesting today. Alistair Heath in the Telegraph said, now she is the person to deliver a Brexit that actually works. He said, she's going hell for leather. This is kind of what Thatcher did back in 1998 with Nigel Lawson's budget. And she's going for that, hell for leather. So she knows she's going to upset some people, but her job, she is saying, is to get Britain back on its feet. And she's just saying that, I think Heath actually said one of the things in his column today, he said that, unlike the past 4 Tory Prime Minister, she's a believer in the power of free markets and liberal economic policies which deliver growth and prosperity. And that's what she's aiming for. So no, she's not going to please all the people all the time. And whatever the fracking proposals are, I think there's some sense that that's going to happen. That's going to really hack off people beyond the red wall. But what she's saying is this is not. She wants to reboot the country. She wants to reboot the city. She wants to boost construction. She wants to get the housing market going again. She's incentivizing investment. She's got a big list. So I'm amazed that she's hit the ground running in the way she has. I know Alison said she's had more time.
I'm going to disagree with Carol here. I do think that she's doing what she thinks is popular, but what she thinks is popular with hardline Tory voters, she thinks is popular with big business. I don't think she knows it's not going to be popular with a lot of people, because these
big business has to be satisfied.
So she's doing what's popular. Big business has to be satisfied
to make this country work. We can't. Yes, and you said before that, she's got to look after the people who are struggling. Well, she is. She's freezing the bill. She's freezing the thing at 2,500. That is a massive relief to the poorest among us. And there's much more help, as you well know, for the people, for the real poor. They're getting much more than they were getting before. So it's not fair to say that she's not looking after the poorest. There was also talk today of, even though the stamp duty might help the richest in society, there was talk of some kind of, looking at council tax, looking to reform that for the poorest in the country. I mean, she's only been in power for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, just want to Well, we need to let Alison speak as well. The Telegraph says Mr Kwarteng will announce 2 rabbits out of the hat that have not previously been reported, which is maybe why they announced national insurance today. But the paper also focuses on the issue of inflation and the Chancellor suggesting it's up to the bank to get a grip on inflation. Should they have gone stronger today, do you think, and done 0.75 of a basis point?
Whereas the banks are warning that some of these policies are actually going to increase inflation. You know, we've seen this in the Tory leadership challenge that Rishi Sunak said throughout that a lot of these policies would in the long term and end up in increased inflation, and it wasn't wise just to go in and start cutting taxes all around the place, that wasn't the best way for growth. I did think that during that time that he seemed to be more economically literate than Liz Truss, but I accept that she has teams of advisors around her and this is what they've decided is the best policy. I think that a lot of it's clear from a lot of the reports that will appear in tomorrow's papers that the Bank of England are quite nervous about what is going to happen and whether that is going to be enough to try and turn the economy around. Okay. And we got to, remember that in the past when things like this have been tried and they have led, we're now saying that we're going to do a second quarter of decline, and that's how you identify a recession. 2 quarters, one by you second right after each other, indicates that a recession. Are we in a recession yet? I'm not sure that we're quite there yet, but we are heading that way. Can they manage to turn it around before we reach that point? That's what we need to wait and see.
Carol, pick up with the Metro and the extraordinary pictures today of those British men who'd been fighting in Ukraine being freed as part of this big, as it turned out, prisoner swap.
Yeah, Ukraine released 55 Russian prisoners and one confidant of Putin, who was godfather to one of his daughters, and Russia released what Zelensky calls 215 warriors, his soldiers, and 5 Brits. So this is great news. These guys, the 2 guys are back home, Aidan Aislinn and Sean Pinner. They're back home tonight. They had been sentenced to death by the Donetsk People's Republic. They were fighting in Ukraine and were arrested by troops there and were sentenced to death. So it's fantastic news tonight that they're back with their families. One of them, I think, thinks that he's looking forward to a takeaway tonight. But it's great news. The deal was brokered by Saudi Arabia. Which got them free. So it's fantastic news all around. It's a bizarre time to release them as well when all this is going on. It just, when Putin's kind of just threatened to nuke us yesterday, and now he's releasing British prisoners. But thank God he has.
Yes, and the Daily Star and, in fact, the Telegraph is picking up on this mobilisation effort, which clearly has brought home to Russians how serious it is. Oh, there we go. There's the 3 of the 5 Britons released there. Thumbs up from one of them, Mr Harding there. But yes, the Star has pictures of long queues at airports. Certainly there are queues on the way into Georgia as well, as families, as I mentioned, Alison, realise that actually this mobilisation could affect them.
It is, and it leads me to believe that there are things going on behind the scenes that maybe we're not fully aware of in terms of what negotiations are going on. We know that Ukraine had made strides during the week. They had regained some territory back. The fact that these prisoners, the pictures of them, they look very thin. They look like they haven't had a great time. You would wonder, would it come as a warning to people who, take themselves off to fight as mercenaries in other countries without any real understanding of what the consequences are? And maybe these men will come back and, speak some sense in terms of advising people not to go off to Ukraine without realising the consequences. But what's happening in Russia in terms of any man of fighting age now being threatened that they could be called up in this mobilisation, they're fleeing. But is that a tactic used by Putin because he knows that he needs some negotiations? Because we do know that there are talks going on behind the scenes. I'm hopeful, that we could come to some sort of resolution, not just because of the instability and the death and the misery that it's caused in that part of the world, but just it destabilises the entire world. It's destabilised ourselves. And you would hope that we're coming near the end game of this terrible war.
Yes, well, that's the optimistic look at it, isn't it? Alison Morris, Carol Malone, thank you both very much indeed. Thank you.